Okay, here real quick, we are just about pre-installed. We have gotten a BHSpringSolutions optimized spring kit, and I'm going to talk just real quickly here about the springs. We went ahead with a light firing pin spring because we have a Type 2 sear lever. That was substantially equivalent to what Girsan had in here. We went ahead with the BHSpringSolutions optimized sear lever spring. BHSpringSolutions optimized sear lever spring is a slightly dimensionally shorter spring. It's going to involve a little less resistance provided by the sear lever for the integrity of the trigger pull. The BHSpringSolutions extractor spring has been installed, and this was dimensionally a quite different extractor spring than the BH extractor spring. In fact, I think I'm going to just see if I can reach that and grab it and show you that real quickly. That was the most different spring that we observed coming out of the Girsan. And we've got that extractor spring right there, and we've got a BH extractor spring hanging around right here. That'll just kind of give you a quick idea of the difference in them. And again, that's a small spring starting out, and we're about like that. This is a pre-installed BH spring here, but you see the BH spring is longer, and it's by about a coil to a coil and a half. So we went ahead with the BH spring. I think it's going to put a little bit more spring pressure on that extractor tail, and we're hoping the Girsan extractor performs perfectly. We're not saying there's anything deficient about any of these springs. However, the springs that we took out of the trigger subassembly that were not positively positioning that trigger lever here, which now is definitely positively positioned, that was an insufficient spring for what it was attempting to do. It was not controlling the trigger lever. We have replaced the original mainspring. Girsan's original mainspring, that is truly a 32-pound mainspring. We put our 32-pound mainspring in there. There's nothing changed about that. We put our safety lever spring. I think this our safety lever spring has a little more spring to it, probably going to offer a little more positivity as far as positioning of the trigger, the safety lever of the traditional operating system. You will notice that BHSpringSolutions third hand tool, it does work perfectly on the Girsan original hammer and frame. Not so on the Springfield. We've got some dimensional difference stuff going on in the area where you see that third hand tool, and that tool does not work the same on the Springfield. As you can see on the Girsan, it just works. It's just exactly how we would expect that tool to work. So we're going to go ahead and finish up the install of the operating system, and we will be getting ready for test firing. Okay, we are reassembled and we are ready to continue test firing. And the changes that we've made to the handgun so far, we are going to continue on with the BH advanced barrel for high powers. The reason for that is in the first session we had better accuracy with the BH barrel. We have replaced out the sights. There's the MedPro Light Night sights. We did find that the trigger lever was not correctly controlled by the magazine disconnect spring and trigger return spring, so we changed out the trigger return spring, the magazine spring in the Girsan's trigger subassembly. We went ahead with BHSpringSolutions magazine release spring, and we went ahead with all BH springs throughout, 32-pound mainspring. That was equivalent to the Girsan. 17-pound traditional recoil spring is what we're starting out with. BHSpringSolutions sear lever spring, because this is a Type 2 sear lever model. BHSpringSolutions light firing pin spring, and BHSpringSolutions extractor spring. And all functions are working super. And you can see that we are clear. We're going to go ahead and demonstrate where the trigger pull is breaking, and try again. And we're 4 pounds, 8.7 ounces, so 4.5 pound trigger pull. You go one more time. £4 pounds, 11 ounces, so we're about 4.5 to about 4.7, 4.75-ish. Folks, that's awfully good for this. Came in, we remember, right around 6 to 6.5 pound ish trigger brake, and all we've done to this is BHSpringSolutions springs, and we're getting, that's a very admirable trigger pull. Again, we do have magazine disconnect installed. This is a type 2 sear lever, so you got a spring underneath that type 2 sear lever. We have a traditional operating system, the OEM hammer and sear relationship, and so that's where we're at. And that that trigger brake weight, for some guys, you might want to go with BHSpringSolutions 2-coil or heavy trigger return spring. That will give you a little more resistance. This is BH's light trigger return spring, and again, this is the original trigger sub-assembly, just with BH's springs in it. And so we are now going to continue our test fire. We have 300 rounds loaded up. We're going to see if this handgun will do 300 rounds consecutively, with only stopping to really change magazines. We're in the middle of a snowy, blustery, extremely cold day, so that's the conditions, and now we're going to get at it. I think out of courtesy to our friends across the road over there, I think we're gonna
hold off for a minute.
Have another cup of coffee before we start shooting that Girsan.
Yeah.
Okay, so one more time, what we're getting ready to do here, we're going to go ahead, and we've got targets out at about 12, 13 yards, and our Girsan MCP35, and we are experiencing about a 4.5 to 4 3/4 pound trigger pull. Now, you guys that know the high power pistol, that's with the magazine disconnect still installed. That is with a type 2 sear lever. All BHSpringSolutions springs, a 32 pound mainspring. One thing we forgot to mention, we did do some simple like polishing bob and polishing compounds polish on the sear face. That was during our first disassembly. So again, that's not any kind of stone filing or anything like that. That's just strictly polishing bob, polishing compound until it's very shiny. And that's the only things that have been done, and we're seeing about a 4.5 to 4 3/4 pound trigger pull, and that frankly is quite low. Now, to the credit of the parts of the Girsan, there is none of that trigger creep. You pull through the take-up. You pull through the take-up, which is, really not bad at all. It's got some resistance, which it should. And then you get past the wall, and there's not any, there's nothing, frankly. It's just a trigger brake, and there's not any, secondary brake or kind of a walking trigger or trigger creep, so to say. Very clean, well done at this stage, considering what we have done to it, which is just mainly simple springs, as well as just polishing the sear face, and we corrected the trigger lever positioning with BH springs for the trigger sub-assembly. So now it's time to go shooting. Okay, so we're out here in the snowstorm. That line right there is about 7 feet for purposes of measuring our extraction. Dave, you ready to? We got to go, brother.
Yep. Got a guy slid through that intersection. It's in the cornfield.
Oh shit! We have another car accident, and law enforcement's going to be on the way. It has just been that kind of a day here in deep winter Indiana 2022. But yeah, we're gonna let the law come by and give them the courtesy of not sounding like we're having a shootout in the neighborhood. Okay, we have no traffic accidents, I think. First snowstorm day of, wow. Man. Where's that other box at? I was going to use it to put empties in. Okay, you ready? Seven feet.
67 feet.
6 to 7 feet extraction, exactly where we would expect with the spring combination we've got going on in there. stand down. Let me get my target before it blows away. Rest are yours. You know what? About 13 yards. Not too bad, all things considered. Do it to it, Dave. Extraction 6, 7 feet. Had one that probably just went about 8.5, 9 feet. Very consistent though. How many magazines do you have left, Dave?
8.
8? Okay.
8. Okay. So we're about 250 rounds through now.
You are getting hot. Everything just now. You fail?
Yep.
Right there? Okay. We're going to stop right there. I just noticed on that last magazine, our whole ejection field is out here, and you've got about 4, 5, 6 right there. That's the point the steel's getting too hot and it started to close down. We're going to get a quick video of that. If you want to, grab your target out there. You can see this ejection field really, really great going on right there. It's very, very consistent. Our line there, that was 7 feet. And I mean, we're just in that 6 to 8 foot sweet spot. And then we got to where we just got to. And what we're doing is we just found the limits, really, of this particular Girsan. And we started, and it'll probably show in the video, the shell casings just started to just close down, and then it did short cycle. Obviously, it just got too hot right then. Okay, so we're out here on day 1 of Indiana snowstorm season, and we did 259 rounds consecutively out of the Girsan. Before the last couple rounds, I watched the extraction distances. In fact, they went right here, right here, right here, and then we short cycled. This is not considered a malfunction of anything. This is metal to metal relationships getting so hot that they just can't work harmoniously anymore. And this is not uncommon. I have had FN Brownings seize up, we call it seizing up. I've had them seize up before at 175. So we were at 259 rounds. We've got 249 more rounds to go. That'll make 241. That'll make 500 rounds today. We had about 100 before that. The gun had about 300 on it before we got it. So this is going to make, we get through these 241, about 900 rounds on the handgun. And we've got our line right here. This is the 7-foot extraction distance line. Just a real consistent ejection field. We're real happy with how this handgun is running so far. So we're going to go ahead and keep going. Do we still have that empty box somewhere? Thank you, sir.
Six to 7, all of them.
Huh?
Between 6 and 7 feet, all of them.
We're just, everything's functioning fantastic out of this gun. I'd say this is the worst conditions I have shot guns in a very, very, very long time. all yours.
All over the place there.
I don't think you were empty. You weren't empty. Yep, I've noticed the extraction distance starting to close up. Getting very, very close to you, actually. How many mags you got?
I've got 5 left.
Let's go ahead and we're going to stop right there. Okay, it's the last half dozen have just barely lopped out of the gun, so we're going to stop, let it cool. Okay, this is the last 65 rounds. This will be 500 rounds we've done today out of the Girsan. Dave, take it away. We did 176 the second round before we got too hot to cycle. Did 259 the first time. No really way to know if we were like completely cooled before we did that second time. We've been, cooling for 15 minutes, something like that. Okay, let's go ahead and get the last 65. So far today, no malfunctions.
More.
Dave, that's 500 rounds out of that gun today. I'm going to run out here and get a picture of our targets. Not too bad. Dave's on the right, Mark's on the left.